Hey, Everett. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is homeownership division Carrie? Okay. Guess we're waiting for everyone else. There we go.
Good morning. I'm trying to figure out how to turn my camera on. Oh, there it is. And I don't see anybody else in the waiting room. Alec is home with a sick child this morning. Oh no, there you are. Who said they were home with a sick child then? Second, somebody else said they were going to be home. Oh, Arthur is home with a sick child. So he won't be joining us today.
Well, let's jump right in because we have limited time. We only have an hour to try to cover as much as we can, and hopefully can bring people up to date.
I'll keep an eye on the waiting room if you want to take it away, Rick or Bill.
You know, are we missing anybody yet who said they'd be here?
It's been a while since I've sent out the invite, so.
That's fine. All right. Well, good morning, everybody.
Checking my email
Thanks.
and the.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I don't see anybody else in my email that other than Arthur that said they weren't going to be here.
Okay. Well, we're down to a pretty small group anyway. So thanks for getting out this agenda. I think, so we're going to keep this meeting time throughout this year. Is that where things landed?
Yeah, the new time didn't work for everybody. It looked like until after the end of the year, and so it just seemed to make more sense to keep the first Monday for the rest of 2022.
Okay. Well, we should probably maybe have on the November agenda, be picking a new date and time so we can get that time locked in on people's calendars before too long. And maybe
it looked like the second Thursday, feedback wise, worked really well for most folks. I didn't hear back from a few people. So unless there's a response that it doesn't work for anybody, that's a date that the homeownership Zoom room is available. That's another conflict that's hard to get on the calendar. So if the second Thursday of the month works, that's a piece that's been a struggle, is to get feedback.
Okay. Well, why don't you go ahead and send out that invite then for January on the monthly, and then if you get a bunch of conflicts bouncing back, then we can take another look. It'd probably be good to get that locked in before people start book planning.
A monthly, or the feedback was every other month, like the odd months, 90-minute second Thursday.
I think that's fine. We can start with that, and if we need more, then we do have some things we need to power through.
So for everybody that's here, does that work? All right.
Yeah, that works.
Great. So maybe we should just do quick intros. It feels like it's been a bit, and we've got kind of a different combo of people here. Real quickly. So I'm Bill Van Vliet, and I'm with NOAA. Alec?
Alex Schiebel with Umatilla Electric Cooperative Government Affairs.
All right. Tawny?
Had to find my mute button there. Tawny Reeder, Craft 3 Consumer Product Manager.
Great. Thank you. Shauna?
Shauna McDonough, Program Analyst with Manufactured Housing, HCS.
Great.
Just started in August. Thanks.
Very good. See Nancy?
Nancy Englehart. I am a manufactured homeowner and currently with OSTA.
Very good. Thank you. Carrie?
Hi, I'm Carrie Hodai. I'm the Manufactured Home Replacement Program Manager.
Great. Rick?
Rick Abrego, Assistant Director, Manufactured Housing.
Great, thanks. And Everett?
Everett Horvath. I'm the Manufactured Home Replacement Navigator for OHCS.
Great, thank you. Did we get everybody? I think so. Very good. All right. So the next agenda item really is committee membership. We're down a bunch of members. We have a few people not here. I guess I just maybe invite the OHCS staff to kind of say if they have plans or thoughts about where you would like to target membership to be, and if there's specific things. I think the rest of us can come up with some ideas, but I guess I'd like to start with what if the staff has specific goals with committee membership as far as numbers and sort of span of expertise and things.
Probably, if anything, gosh, we have to get this membership up. Did we decide what was a good number? I know we had spoke a couple of times on a good number of members, and but I can't for the life of me remember what we spoke about. How many was it? Don't want too many, but at the same time, don't want too little either.
That's right. And I can't remember if our charter has a range in there. And so have ready access to that. I'm having some computer issues this morning. But I think, you know, we have what, about 5 community members here today. I think it'd be good to, you know, sort of have, you know, 9, I would guess. You don't want it too big, but, you know, I think a little bit broader span.
Yeah, you know, thought came in my mind is maybe seeing if anyone from our DRAC committee would be interested in being a part of this team.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, usually CASA has somebody here. I'm not sure if they have an actual, yeah, Lisa's just not able to, must not be able to be here. She's on leave, I think, for a month. A sabbatical, I think, if I remember correctly. So she'll be a regular, I'm quite sure. Arthur has been pretty regular. It'd be great to have at least one other community representative, if not more. Yeah, so let's give that some thought and probably maybe consider adding 2 or 3 new members to the group. Does that seem reasonable to everybody? Okay. So let's go with that, and let's put this on the November agenda, and I'll just ask everyone, staff and community members, to give some thought to you know, who those 2 or 3 additional folks might be, and Rick, I like your idea too of that connection, or even from the rental housing group, since they do the park preservation funding, that might be another good connection as well, or at least have them available periodically for updates on what's happening with that resource. I think that would be useful.
Who's in charge of that to see if he'd be interested.
Okay, be great. So I guess the next question, Rick, and we can talk about this offline, is just who should do the recruiting, whether that should come through the agency or whether you think it would be best coming from the community members of the committee. I don't have a strong opinion about that. So
yeah, I could do that. I just would need, because I can reach out to the DRAC committee and I can reach out to Ed, but if the committee themselves had someone they wanted me to reach out to, I can do that.
Okay, that'd be great, because I think it has to be, it's an appointment from the director, so that'll need to go through you anyway. Okay. All right, well, let's maybe we think about some additional members. You know, Carrie, maybe you could send out in the meantime after this meeting sort of the current roster, so we all have it fresh, other than having to look at this at an email invitation. I think that'd be helpful to frame for all of us to make sure we get good representation.
I can do that.
That'd be great, thank you. And yeah, and Andre's not here either. She's usually here today, so we may end up with a few more than 9, but that's okay. Should we? How do the other community members feel about that? Does that seem like a good path for us to go through? Okay. And then Nancy, maybe think about whether we want another homeowner on the work group. And if that, you think that would be useful from sort of that perspective. And
I think it would. OSTA's going through a kind of collapse and try and rebirth kind of a situation right now. their membership's really low, and the board members, there's just a very few left, and they're going in another direction. So, I would look, I have other connections that perhaps I can ask other homeowners. Yeah.
Great. And then maybe we can talk with Lisa about the possibility of getting a co-op member too, to join, because that would be an alternative. That would be great. So Tony, I think she put in the chat a question about sort of the skills that we'd be looking for a participant, and we've got, it's good to have use. We get the home financing side. If I am stay on the committee, as long as I'm on the committee, we've got sort of the park financing side. I think it's great to have sort of development, but then I think anything that touches manufactured housing or development expertise is useful. And it can be financing, it can be, development, it can be energy efficiency, tenant advocacy, it can be any of those angles. And then within state government, we've tried to pull in some of the different state agencies that touch manufactured housing, because it's been a useful connection as well. So that's where I'd kind of frame what it is, we're looking for. I think we're just looking for people that have some knowledge and expertise in the sector.
If anyone's going to create like a little blurb about that would be helpful, then I can share it like within Craft 3 too, because then folks can put it on like their social media or something like that, and we can sort of, if we want to widely distribute this information to get a quality candidate.
Okay, very good. Put that on the list of things to come up with. And talk about that. Rick and Carrie, maybe we can chat about that too at some point after the meeting, about coming up with something that would be useful to support the recruitment process. Just writing that down or I'll forget. So should we jump maybe then to the next item and talk about the pipeline and how the replacement program is going right now, and just get an update from OHCS folks about that. I know there are some, and I can't remember if they're temporary or permanent rules by now, but I know there were some rule changes put through to change the loan amounts. So maybe just catch us up on that. But then I would love to hear a pipeline and get a sense of what's in the queue, a sense of what's completed, maybe if there are any in process. That'd be just really great.
Sure. Let me see if I can share. I have a PDF I can. Oh, sharing on Zoom. Okay. I'm used to Teams. Oh, here we go. Can you all see this?
Yep.
Okay. I tried to color code it. I'll go up to the top. The sort of pale colors are the older loans that we've done previously, back before I even came on board, when Chelsea was running the program. Pretty much primarily when the program was doing all wildfire loans. And Everett and I really tried to switch switch gears and focus all on getting the regular program up and running when the community action agencies got their funding to do their own wildfire loans. And it really, it has taken off, and Everett's getting, I don't know how many you said on Friday, 3 to 4 calls a week, 3 to 4 applicants a week. And so in bright green, you can see these are completed loans. I don't want to say completed projects because, as you guys know, they take a long time from ordering to turnkey and moving in. So these are committed funds in bright green of from when we've reviewed the application, determined that the participant is eligible and that their project is feasible, and it's moving forward, you know, from ordering their home to decommissioning the old home, and the project is going to happen. So in bright green, since March, April of this year, these are regular program homes that are moving forward. Bright yellow, these are wildfire loans that we're still doing. We're still receiving some GAP loans through our program. These are loans that either they're receiving a wildfire loan and there is still a gap in funding that they don't, they're a full project, still needs a little bit of funding to complete, or the homeowner is over income for a wildfire loan, but still qualifies for our loan. And so we'll fund that project. So we're still funding some of those. And I guess there actually are quite a few.
On the wildfire, can I ask a couple questions?
Sure.
On the wildfire, I know we passed legislation specifically to make this eligible. I'm just interested how the department sort of determines, sort of now that the disaster recovery team is in place and they have, you know, some of their own capital, how the decision is made, whether somebody comes through sort of your door or that disaster recovery door.
So sorry, Andres, I gotta admit her. Do you guys, I don't see any faces other than yours, Bill, because I'm looking at the PDF. Is Andre
Sorry
here?
about that.
It's just a little tiny screen. So I see Tawny's
She's in.
name, Bill, and then myself. Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Andre. To answer your question about the wildfire loans versus how they get funneled over to the manufactured home replacement program. So I think the WRRA, and Everett, jump in and help me if you remember what WRRA stands for.
Wildfire Recovery and Resiliency Account.
Okay. That money went out to the community action agencies in March to sort of take over the manufactured home replacement loans. And the income eligibility for those loans is 80% area median income or below. And so so some manufactured homeowners, if they're 100% between 80 and 100, they'll still get funneled over to us. So from March until now, some of those homeowners have continued to come to our program. So that's one way they've continued to come to us. So you can all scroll up.
So would these amounts be in addition to what they might be getting from the other bucket? Okay.
Yeah. Or this homeowner in Marion County was below 100 but above 80. They came to us. Or Klamath, this was a bootleg fire, so they didn't qualify for WRRA. That money was specific to the 2020 fires. So there's various reasons that they'll continue to and then these down below, these Jackson County ones are receiving both WRRA and GAF loans from us, because at the rising costs of building and purchasing, or the construction costs to place the homes plus the costs to purchase the homes, the WRA loans, they're maxing out the WRA loans and then still cannot complete their projects.
Okay.
So they're receiving both loans at this point.
If they're between 80 and 100, are they also getting some private debt to help with their replacements?
Most of them, no. Maybe Everett can take the, we've received some requests for loans that we've had to review very carefully. Because there have been some projects where some homeowners have looked at taking on loans to expand their project above what they've lost in the fires, to sort of upgrade their situation. And we've had to look at the intent of what the program loan was meant to replace versus like it was meant to replace what homeowners lost, not meant to assist in upgrading a homeowner's I guess lifestyle and wealth building, I guess. And so, for example, our loan can't be used to build 2-car garages or purchase luxury upgrades in the purchase order that aren't like energy efficiency upgrades to meet the energy efficiency requirements that are in the program rules, things like quartz countertops and things like that. And so we've had to explain that our program loan can't be used for those things. And so we've had to explain that the homeowner is eligible for the program loan, but the project isn't. And so the project needs to be adjusted in order to use the program loans to pay for that.
Okay. I guess it just surprises me that somebody sort of in the 80 to 100% of median needs this much additional support to get into a home, and isn't able to help sort of pay for more of it themselves, I guess is what I'm struggling with.
Bill, if you look at the program rules for wildfire, that doesn't require them to take on any additional debt. So that was written in statute. So that we can't require them to. And number two is the cost of replacing homes is getting so expensive that even with the little FEMA money, and a lot of these folks were insured for the value of the structure. So let's say their double wide was valued at $25,000. That's all they got from the insurance company. And so it doesn't even come close to covering the cost of replacing the home. So that's where we're at.
Okay. And I can't see the headings. There's two columns with numbers, a left and a right column. what are those representing?
Oh, the left column is the committed funds and the right column is dispersed.
Okay.
So it
Got it.
dispersed funds, the homes haven't come offline yet, most of them.
So,
And then, sorry to pepper you with questions, but how much is decommissioning versus home loan? 'Cause there's two different buckets of resource, right?
Right. The green is the decommissioning and replacement. So anything that's in green is decommissioned and replaced. Blue.
But there's a grant amount that they can get for the decommissioning.
Right.
Right.
Wildfire doesn't use any decommissioning.
Right, because that's gone for the most part, we presume.
Yeah.
But otherwise, they're together. Is that what you're saying? Is that the loan and the decommissioning grant are both represented in the green ones?
No, the decommissioning I didn't add to this. The decommissioning grant. I think Everett can probably speak more to how much of the decommissioning grant per replacement project is typically used. I think we're coming closer and closer to that $15,000 maximum today than 2-3 months ago. It was, I guess, 6 months ago even, it was less common to come close to maxing out that that grant. And now some we've had to take a look at, can the loan be used to supplement, particularly when there's asbestos abatement, the decommissioning.
Andre, you raised your hand. Do you have a question or a comment?
Oh, I'm sorry, I can't see the hand raised.
oh, I'm sorry. There we go. I didn't actually raise it that way. My question is, could you, with the wildfire program, is everyone pretty much receiving the maximum? Well, if they have, let's say, I'm just using $100,000, even though it's not the right number. Let's say that the cost of a new home is $100,000 and their insurance money is $20,000. Would you then just automatically supplement because you don't require any additional loan participation or anything like that? Would you then immediately fill the remainder of that gap as long as the home, the new home coming in is comparable to what they lost? Is that how is that the math on the wildfire loans? And I don't know if Everett or you would be the better person to answer that.
I can take that for you.
Sure.
You know, everybody's situation is unique, and so, like I said, a lot of these folks, they would get what I would say $35,000 for insurance, and then maybe $10,000 for the property inside the home. You have to realize it's been over 2 years since these homes burnt down. And a lot of these people are using that money to pay for rent, or to house themselves, so a lot of that money's gone. And then they said the expense is just, it's going up and up every month. What used to, you could replace a single wide for $100,000 6 months ago, and now it's $175,000. So it's, fuel costs, everything's going up and up and up. So that's kind of where we're at on that.
So just to clarify then, pretty much everyone then is getting the maximum amount as a pure subsidy from you guys for the new home. They're not bringing in their own resources. They're not bringing in insurance payments and stuff like that. Basically, you're supplying the resources, you're supplying people with the new home from your program. No. Okay.
No. But so basically what happens is they go through the community action agency and they use the WIRA funds first, and then we're just covering the gap after that.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I came in late and I totally apologize, and this is a chronic problem for me. So the Myra funds are what are they?
The
That-
wildfire recovery and resilience account.
Right, okay, got it. Thank you. I'm all set now. And are those grant funds?
Yes, they are.
And,
grants.
okay, thank you.
Are the Umatilla ones that are on here in conjunction with the Umatilla Electric program?
Yes, yes, that's a gap loan after they. So yeah, these ones in yellow are recent wildfire gap loans after a maximum WRRA
Got it.
award. So I think that's a good segue into our rules changes, because the loan maximum changes are currently temporary. They are going to become permanent, I believe, on the 21st of this month. We've made some changes, some updates to our definitions and our loan terms in order to give us the ability to
I would say better clarify the project.
better clarify the project
Yeah.
and better review the project so that what folks are replacing, or what folks either on the decommissioning and replacement side or on the wildfire side, what folks are replacing, what they're replacing or what they lost is on the new side similar. So it's basically a like for like program, and in shorter terms. Our rules say it in much longer terms. It's a like for like program. And so that's what we've clarified in our rules, and that construction costs and upgrades and all of those things have to be approved by the department in order for our loan funds to be able to pay for those things, because folks are going into dealerships and getting talked into upgrades, or they're getting hit up by contractors and either in parks or on their own land, and whether it's required or not, being given bids for infrastructure or decks, ingress, egress, garages, all those things we need to be able to review them and know whether or not they're needed or not, and to keep these costs reasonable.
If I can follow up on Carrie, so I think on the replacement side, people are pretty reasonable in terms of what they're replacing their home with. What we saw from the wildfire side is people kind of went on spending sprees, and they lost a double wide home in a park, and they used their insurance money to purchase land, and now they're digging wells and putting in garages and going for quartz countertops and oak cabinets. Maybe quasi gaming the system. So we have to have a policy in place where we can say, no, we're not gonna fund that because of this.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, we just found that the language is way, just vague. And there's just some that said, hey, it isn't written that we can't do it. So it was just trying to clarify it so that we're able to, again, say, you qualify by statute, we have to accept all these applications, but we don't have to accept the project. And so we're looking at these, because normally we could see the cost, and Everett's really good at looking at the cost and say, yeah, that's where it should be. And then we'll get these other projects and you're wondering, wow, that is a big project. And then he digs in deeper and finds out why it's so big. And this is where we find out that they're asking for us to build additional things. And so that's what we go back and say, well, we definitely want to help you, but we can't do this. And this will help us at least when, as they continue forward, they'll look that you will just make sure that, we'll always point back to the statute and say, okay, you need to stay within this reasonable cost, and so that we don't get too far out as far as expenses go in order to make the funds go farther.
Do you need any statutory changes, or are you able to manage it through program rule? Okay.
As we move forward, hopefully this will do it.
Yeah.
But how nothing's ever out of the question.
The only statutory change I can foresee in the future that might be needed is the cap on the decommissioning grant.
Okay.
Particularly with asbestos abatement, we've seen people hit that $15,000 cap for decommissioning.
And just on that, do you have a sense of whether that service is readily attainable by customers, or do we need to be thinking of ways to increase the capacity of companies that do that remediation work?
Oh, there's plenty of remediation companies. That's not an issue.
Okay.
I think that having a number in statute, or I don't know if it's that the number's in statute or that just word gets around what the number is. We might be seeing companies saying that $15,000 or $14,998 is how much it costs to remove a manufactured home.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's concern there
Unfortunately. Yeah.
that if the statute changes to the grant is $20,000, that it'll just become $20,000.
That's right. That's
So,
right. Sadly, the costs will get managed to that ceiling.
yeah.
Well, there's a lot of the home dealers, they go through, they have partnerships with contractors to do all the decommissioning and the site work. And those are the ones that are the culprit. I mean,
Yeah.
the general contractor in Warrington, Oregon, they're not privy to that information, and their
Yeah.
bids are pretty honest. It's that realm of contractors that are kind of pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
Would it be possible for us to, Andre, go ahead. You're muted.
Thank you. Two things. First of all, big kudos for your street smarts in preventing gaming of the system. Thank you very much for protecting these important assets. And I just want to kind of put on a sticky board for a future discussion, maybe at a future meeting. I know right now you're trying to get resources out the door because there's a time limit and so forth. But at some point, there's going to be, hopefully, you're going to have more people interested in this program than we have resources to support. And you guys may already be there. I don't know, because I don't know, what your marketing is like and how word is spreading and so forth. And so I think it would be helpful to me if we had a bigger discussion about whether the greater good is to spread the peanut butter a little bit more thinly, or to set up a system for prioritizing who gets the money and keep it thicker, but keep it thicker intentionally, put the lumps where they're needed, as it were. And to me, those are the kind of policy decisions or policy advice, not decisions, advice that this committee might be able to help you with, while you guys are street smart and able, more really capable of and you can inform that discussion. But I think that's the kind of thing that would be good to discuss kind of at a policy level here at a future meeting, when we can really take it on. And you can prepare some information in advance about what you're seeing in terms of need and what the pipeline looks like, and what your marketing is like, so that it can inform that discussion that we can have to hopefully assist.
Yeah, I think that would be a good discussion to have. I guess I would just echo Andre's comments. This is great. I mean, I'm very excited that there's this many projects in the queue. It's really fantastic. It'll be a good story to tell during session to support more resources for it. So I think that's great. I think one thing I'd like to add on to the policy discussion that we have is, when this first came through, we had the much smaller loan limits. And I think, when we drafted the bill, we decided that because the total dollar amount wasn't huge, we were pretty comfortable with a pure forgiveness subordinate note that would amortize off over 10 years, I think is what it was, or something like that. I can't remember what it ended up in there. Now that we're starting to, that cap is much bigger, and we're starting to put out much bigger chunks of money, maybe we should put a limit on the amount that gets purely forgiven, and there be some kind of a trustee due on sale. It doesn't have to be amortized, but even if it were a due on sale, to recapture part of it, since the dollar amounts per home are so great now. I just think that'd be a good policy level discussion to have. So it's not perceived as such an expensive program, because some people will frame it as a giveaway. I mean, they just will. So if we need, if people are needing 175 and we have resources, I don't have well, I don't love it, but I can understand it. And that's one thing, but maybe we should get 100 of it back on sale, or even just 50 of it back on sale. I mean, something like that. I guess the other thing I was going to ask is if it would be possible for this committee to get a published version of this pipeline, just so we can see the update. It's kind of hard for me on this screen share to really have time to kind of sit with it and understand it. I think that'd be really helpful. And even if you just send it out, I don't know how often if you publish this formally, but even monthly, just send it out to us the first of every month. That'd be really helpful, I think, so we can kind of monitor and keep our eye on how progress is going for the first, really up until now. This program, both the formation of the rules and the program guidelines, and now sort of monitoring, has been the sole and primary purpose of the committee. So it'd be great to have this pipeline to sort of continue through with that.
Yeah, that's actually, it's not a bad idea. It definitely, it wouldn't, this format wouldn't change. It'd stay like this. Every month, I'm not sure if every month would benefit. We can do it, but I think the report would stay the same. Because once they're on, we're literally waiting for completion of projects. But the one thing we need to,
sorry,
no, that's okay. What did you want to say something, Carrie?
You're not going to see much change monthly, but maybe bi-monthly.
No, and that's fine. I don't need it monthly. Sometimes I know for our organization, if we just have a monthly cadence, then things get done and they don't get forgotten as well. If we know on the first of every month we have to print these reports and send them out, then we do it. And if it's periodically, then it's like, oh crap, we forgot to do that. So however you guys need to manage that, but I would say maybe at least for every meeting, would be helpful.
We definitely do that. But you brought up a good point. There were some points that were made that before we end this meeting that I wanted to kind of bring you guys up to speed on, and that's that I don't know if you're aware of it or not, Bill, but I'm sure you've been hearing talk that a lot of the community action agencies are either out of money or running out of money. And so by statute, we have to accept applications in. So as they're running out, everyone's coming to us.
Okay.
And so if they fit under the guidelines and it's just a regular project like Everett says, we put them in the pipeline and it's a first come, first served basis. And as long as it's complete, what we've narrowed it down to is we need completed applications, not, hey, I want my place in line and I'll get my application in there. So we're looking at completed applications and then putting them in the pipeline. The downside of that is if it stays at this level of applications and completed applications, we will be out of funds probably before the end of the year. So once we
Calendar year.
What's that?
Calendar year.
Yeah, but we would, I imagine if the quality of applications, the ones that their true need, we've looked at them, we understand this is where we're at. We'll more than likely we'll be fully committed. You know, I would say between mid-November and December, we should be fully committed. And then we just have to, then we're just managing what we have. But with, you know, and so then basically everyone, I mean, as community action agencies run completely out, everyone's going to be, wildfire won't get their CBDG money till sometime in probably the first quarter of 2000 of next year. And then we won't get our funds till the new biennium, but we'll be looking at everything, trying to see what we can manage. But for the most part, it's kind of, we're going to be, as soon as we are, we'll let you know we're fully committed, because the funds will be there. But again, they're just sitting, waiting for homes to be built and then monies to be allocated out. But
Yeah.
we'll keep you posted on that.
That'd be great. You know, and having just that recap on sort of total availability, what's been appropriate allocated to projects, what's remaining to work with, that kind of a quick recap would be really helpful. Sorry, and I don't want to take too much more time on this aspect of it, but the money that went to the community action agencies, was that directly from the legislature?
You know, I'm not familiar with wildfire funds at all. That was more of a, you could probably contact Chelsea on that, and she could give you all that. That's really where she went to go manage that end of it. We just knew that we were still managing all the projects that we had taken on, and we were just the overflow, and now we are the flow. Unfortunately.
Yeah, I'd be curious from her, because I mean, they're going to have a truckload of money here. And so I guess, you know, I would hope they wouldn't keep pushing wildfire recovery people over to your buckets when they've got money that can only be used for that resource, for that purpose. So understanding how those two interface would be pretty helpful.
Yeah, really what we were hoping to do, and this is just more selfishly as a department, is we were hoping to just concentrate on our decommissioning and replacement program.
Right.
But because by statute, we can't turn anyone down. We have to help them. That's, you know, as community action agencies started losing, you know, either running short, they, you know, we started getting phone calls, and we have to help. So, and we're more than willing to help.
Yeah, no, and I totally get that. Representative Marsh and I sort of drafted that legislation, and we did it specifically because we weren't going to get into disaster recovery money from the feds for an eternity, or at least what we knew it was going to feel like an eternity. So we needed to have a resource, but now that federal money is getting closer and closer. So it'd be nice to be able to kind of pivot back, and that may be a statute change that we need to think about making too. Is the minute that money's available, they should pivot back to that resource. Because I agree, you should be able to focus on the replacements, really. and not have to spend your precious resources on wildfire when they've got a ton of money over here to do that.
Yeah, and then we just, and then we're always, we want to help, and I don't know if optics wouldn't look good for us if we said, no, we only want to do this.
And
But we want to be careful. Go ahead, Carrie.
I'd want to take a look at what the eligibility criteria is for the CBD. I can't even remember all of it, but that block grant,
Right.
because I wouldn't want to cut out any of the manufactured home folks
Right.
that fall in those little areas, if they're below 100 and over 80, or if they, whatever it might be. I wouldn't want to, erase a line of text in the legislature that would then, there might be a handful of folks that could use our program that can't use that money.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, fair
So
enough. I get-
CDBG is standardly up to 80. But this is recovery money. It's different. And so I don't know what the limits are on that, but standard CDBG is up to 80. So you really would have to check specifically how this is colored.
All right. I think we're at time. Anybody else have anything they want to get on the table today before we sign off till next month? All right. So I guess if we could get this pipeline as a starter, that'd be great, just so we could see it and have it with us, and then just start getting it with every meeting. Maybe we can just start with that, attach it to the meeting invite would be great. And then we can talk about some of these policy questions. Yes, Andre?
Did we decide on a standard meeting date or a process for that?
Yeah, Carrie's going to send out an updated request. So we're going to stay here until the end of the year, and then we're going to shift to the Thursday time that we had talked about. And I can't even remember what the hour slot was, but we had talked about it. It seemed to work for most people. And then we agreed that we'd revisit if that Thursday after the first of the year ended up being a problem. So your conflict on these Mondays will be short-lived. All right, thanks, everybody. See you next month.
thank you.